there, YouTube! I'm back again for a new series called 5 Facts, where I take a real deep internet dive into some random pop culture thing that I really do enjoy and come back with 5 facts that I think everybody might find fascinating. And with our first episode, we're going to be talking about Jimmie's Chicken Shack, a band that I really still do to this day enjoy, but we're going to be talking about 5 random facts about them. Now, before we get into this, if you don't know who Jimmie's Chicken Shack is, go Google them, go YouTube them, come right back, click that like button, and now let's get on to the list. So first and foremost, I was going to talk about their highest charting songs and album sales and stuff like that because I personally find that all that stuff fascinating. However, while I was researching that, I found out something way more interesting, but let's talk about it. So Jimmie's Chicken Shack started on their own record label called Foul Records. Yes, it is a pun. And they sold about 25,000 units, which is great. And then in the mid-90s, they were actually snatched up by Elton John's record label. Yeah, that Elton John, Rocket Man Records. Now, to explain this, it was the mid-90s and grunge bands were snatched up, and bands like that, like New Radicals, Marcy's Playground, Finger 11, they were getting snatched up because they were going to be the next big thing. They released their first album, which was called Pushing the Salmonella Envelope, and it was a weird hybrid album, combining their best songs from their previous records and some new songs, and it did well, having 2 songs chart in the top 40 rock records, which was High, which reached number 20, and Dropping Anchor, which reached number 33, which I recommend both the songs. They're great songs. But then I realized that they didn't chart in the top 200. I thought that was kind of odd. The top 200 albums of the week. That used to be a big deal. Did you make the top 200? Where were you? How'd you peak? And they weren't in there. I thought, okay, new band, new everything. So then we checked their second album, which was Bring Your Own Stereo, which was really where I got acquainted to Jimmie's Chicken Shack with the amazing song Do Right, which actually charted at number 12 on the US modern rock chart. However, surprisingly, they were still not on the top 200 Billboard albums, which is my number 1 fact right now, which is that they never charted in the top 200. They were also out promoting the album with bands like 311, Creed, Fuel, and Finger 11. To put a little bit of perspective on that, the New Radicals, aka what most people would know as a one-hit wonder, were celebrating their 41st week on the charts still. So how in the heck did they never chart in the top 200? Well, that brings me to interesting fact number 2, which is that according to Jimmie himself, they were sabotaged by the record company who pulled the money out from Jimmie himself. When Do Right was doing really well, it was about to cross over into pop radio, which would have really catapulted us into a different era. They actually pulled the budget so they could put out Sum 41. If Sum 41 wouldn't have came around when they did, then Jimmie's Chicken Shack might still be as big as they are now. But we're not going to get in too deep with that connection. So let's go to our number 3 fact, which is a completely non sequitur. Jimmie's Chicken Shack is actually a reference to a restaurant/jazz club that Malcolm X used to work at. Yeah, totally weird. Also, Red Fox and jazz musician Charlie Parker Jr. Yeah, totally random non sequitur. So let's move on to number 4, back to Jimmie's Chicken Shack, the band, which is that Jimmie has said the entire Bring Your Own Stereo album was actually about his ex-girlfriend, who stayed with him for years and years and years as he clawed to the top and eventually got signed to a record label. And then she dumped him as soon as they got signed. But that's not how this is supposed to work. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. But hey, I guess that's what happened. Fact number 5 is about their next album, which was called Represent. It came out in 2004, and to put things into perspective, things were not going well with their record label, as their label had told them to, quote, sound more like Limp Bizkit. Yeah, that's probably not good when you hear that. But what I found fascinating about this was it didn't chart in the top 200, despite the fact the first single, and the only single that came off this, was a song called Falling Out, featuring Aaron freaking Lewis. Now, Falling Out, I think, is a great song. I don't think it feels like a Jimmie's Chicken Shack song, but I think it's a great song nonetheless that you should check out. But Aaron Lewis was white hot at this point. Stain's next album, Chapter 5, was going to hit number 1, and their previous album, Shades of Grey, was still on the chart after 43 weeks, peaking at number 1. And even with that Aaron Lewis star power, they still were not able to catapult into the top 200, which I thought was really fascinating. But there are 5 facts about Jimmie's Chicken Shack. Let me know what you think about the list, and let me know if there's some topics you would like me to take a deep dive in, because I'm sure it might fascinate me as well. If you enjoyed this, please consider clicking that subscribe button down below. Or if you want to support me as a media creator, consider supporting my Patreon down below, or checking out my board game channel, Bowers Game Corner, because yeah, I got all sorts of weird interests. But as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.